going to share my screen. And away we go. Everybody can see the presentation? Yeah, perfect. Great. Well, thank you everybody for being here today. I know that everyone always thinks that the springtime is a time where coaches just are off and don't have anything to do. But we on the inside, we all know how busy this time of year is, not just for finishing up last year, getting ready for next year, but also trying to find time for yourselves to recover from what's always a busy season. Cette présentation va être en anglais, mais je sais qu'il y a des personnes ici, les entraîneurs, puis les autres qui sont francophones. Alors, si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez les poser en français. Si vous avez besoin de plus de clarification, je peux aider là aussi. Et si aussi, après la réunion, tu veux avoir quelques plus de minutes pour parler en français avec moi ou Julie, on peut faire ça. Alors, yeah, so for now, I will present in English. And before we get started, I just want to say this is my first chance to kind of address everybody in the room here. And congratulations to all of you on your respective seasons. There was a ton of successes this past year, both domestically, but internationally with historic results by our World Junior team, our U23 team, our FISU team, our World Championship team, and on World Cups. And in addition to just like all the great performances we saw, one of the things that I think is been a lot of fun to witness over the course of the last couple of years is just the continued collaboration amongst our community of coaches, our programs, our teams, our divisions, and to see that continue to build and foster and strengthen not only what we do as a collective, but just make our community something that is aspiring to be a part of. And really excited to be here in Ottawa this week with a lot of our best coaches in the country this week through some NCCP workshops, and then starting this evening, Julie is kicking off the coach development seminar. So excited to see hopefully some of you there today and this weekend. So today's a chance for us to provide an update on planning for next year's Olympic team. On November of 28th last year, we published our Olympic selection criteria. That process involved started in May of last year when we first started working with the COC on the process. The FIS announced their qualification system in June. And then we spent time in the summer reviewing our 2022 games criteria, collecting feedback, and then building that into draft one, which we shared in the fall. We gathered more feedback. We had a town hall, and then took that feedback and built it into the final version that was published at the end of November. So today is really a chance for us to provide an update as to where things currently stand in the qualification process, what our current quota allocation is, what that looks like. And then we still have a couple of items that we need to clarify in our selection criteria around the trials that we'll collect feedback on. So before we talk about the selection trials in December, I do think it's always important for us to remember what the objective is for Nordiq Canada, for Team Canada. And for us, and this is stated clearly in our selection criteria in the first point, and it's a prioritized selection of athletes who have medal performance potential at the games in a clear and transparent manner using international benchmarks for performance. Our goal is to go to the games and be on a podium, and it's a lofty goal. But we believe we have a pool of athletes, and we have the potential to do so. And one of the things we always have to do every year as an NSO is we need to demonstrate to our sport partners, the Canadian Olympic Committee, Sport Canada, on the podium, and show them evidence as to why we believe we have podium potential performances. And so for us going into next year's games, these are the three events that we are prioritizing, again, based on data. And when we look at the selection trials, this is the information that we're really using to make our decisions. So the men's team sprint free, the women's team sprint free, as well as the men's 4x7.5 kilometer relay. Just a little bit of background, like a couple of years ago when we started looking at what our podium potential was for 2026, we were looking at team events versus distance events versus sprint events, and more globally, obviously we know that Norway, Russia, who's currently not competing, but have been competing from 22 previous, Sweden and Finland are the sort of conventional Nordic power nations, and they've historically, so for nations that are outside of those countries, the team events present the best opportunity for nations to achieve podium performances, and it's a 28% chance going back to about 2002. I'd have to double check my data stats again. I've put ourselves into what I call a tier 3 nation, which means we haven't been on a podium at a major championship during that time. So I guess my data set went back to 2014, because in 2010 we were world champion in the team sprint. But we've had numerous top 5 finishes at major championships. If you look at the distance racing, if you're a non-Nordic power nation, the chances of podium is actually only 1.6%, which is extremely low. Sprinting events actually falls more at 20%. One of the things we have to do every year is we need to demonstrate through data how athletes or teams are on the podium pathway going into an Olympic championship or a world championship. So this is what is called an athlete funnel. This data is managed by the people out on the podium, and we're able to use this data to help demonstrate how we're tracking. And you can see here, this is our men's team sprint funnel. Anything between the two black lines is considered on the podium pathway. Anything below the dotted line is considered higher probability. Anything above the dotted line is considered lower probability. And so we've maintained consistently in that bandwidth over the last 4 or 5 years. We don't have a similar funnel for the 4x7.5 kilometer relay. The data that On the Podium provides to us it's just not very accurate at the moment. It's something that we are working on with them to better to be able to use it more reliably. But you can just see here the consistency of our 4x relays since 2020, when a large number of our athletes in our talent pool won the silver medal at World Juniors, and it's sort of in this level of performance has been maintained through this past year in Trondheim, when the 4 men you see here were just about 1 second off of the podium with an amazing result. And then for women's team sprint, we don't have a tremendous amount of data, but the data we do have do show that our women's team for the team sprint is also on the podium pathway for next year, and this is another event that we're excited about. So before we talk about trials, I just want to give an update on our Olympic Games quota, because that obviously is a pretty important thing to consider when we're looking at trials. What is available for qualification? Going into this season, our goal as a ski nation was to finish inside the top 10 of the Olympic nations ranking list. We finished inside the top 10 for both males and females, and with that we felt we had a good chance of being able to obtain a quota of 12 athletes, 6 of each gender. That was more based off of historical quota allocations over the last few Olympic Games cycles. The On the lower end, we thought it would be 5. On the higher end, we thought it would be 6. The Olympic quota for next year allocations have come out, and currently we only unfortunately have 4 men's Olympic quota, and we have 6 women's Olympic quota. That is, there's a link here. I'm not sure if you can click on that link. If not, maybe Nathaniel, we can share the link to that the page on the FIS where all of the Olympic quota data is located. It's sometimes a little bit tricky to find on the FIS webpage. If people want to take a closer look as to at how it all breaks down. But to just kind of summarize, up until this point here, the FIS allocates 138 quota spots for each gender for the Olympics based on their qualification process. And after that, the first 138 quota spots had point this year for the men on the Sorry, my internet froze there for a second. Hopefully, I didn't miss too much. But yeah, we out of over 10,000 points, if we had gained 1 extra point, we would have been ranked 9th on the men's list, which would have actually given us a 5th men's quota spot. So it's really unfortunate how it all played out, but there's 10 additional quota spots still to be allocated on January 21 and 22. And so based on past experience, we are hoping to be able to obtain at least 1 more men's spot in that process and be able to nominate a team of 5. But for now, when we go to trials, we know we have 6 women's spots and 4 men's spots. And just to kind of follow up on the selection criteria, we had a couple of selection criteria points for last year's competition season. Catherine Stewart-Jones met that, so she will be one of the athletes nominated for next year's team, which means going into trials, there's currently 5 women's spots available for selection at trials right now. Are there any questions on this before I move forward? So a little bit unrelated to trials, but still very much related to what we're going to talk about today. Our domestic season opener is scheduled for December 6th and 7th. It'll be a Nordic Cup, so one of our COC events in Sovereign Lake, BC. We're using this as a super tour, or the US is also using this as a super tour event, so it'll be a really strong depth of field. The tentative race formats that have been discussed would be a sprint classic and a 10-kilometer free interval start, so that we're mirroring some of the events that we'll be using the next week at our trials. The reason why I bring this event up is when we look at the first main item that we want to talk about for trials, which is the identifying the official dates and the event schedule. We have had some feedback already that the feeling is that for some athletes that are trying to qualify for the Olympics, that the events at Sovereign are a little bit tight to Prince George, and that there's a chance that some athletes and or teams might choose to skip the Sovereign Lake event and focus primarily on trials. Of course, that is always everybody's option, is to identify what is the optimal competition pathway for you and your goals. But where possible, obviously, we'd like to be able to see our top athletes competing at our first COC event of the year, which means we would like to get feedback on, is there an optimal event schedule that would allow teams and athletes to be able to compete in one or both of the events in Sovereign as part of their preparation for trials. So option 1 is sort of the classic layout that we were originally planning on using. The dates that the OC in Prince George have actually, before we even talk about the dates, I just want to just speak quickly to Prince George. So Prince George is the location for our trials for next year. The dates that they have held for the event is the 11th to 16th. Why do we pick Prince George? I mean, a few things. One, obviously, snow in December is really important. There's no guarantee that we can have snow in many parts of the country. Western Canada is our safest option for being able to plan an event. But having snowmaking helps guarantee to a much higher probability our ability to host an event successfully. We also didn't want to host the event at a high altitude. The Olympics next year, the altitude in Val d'Enfien is only about 1,000 meters. So we wanted to avoid hosting our trials at a venue like Sovereign that's closer to 1,700 meters. Obviously, having a homologated course is really important, and then the OC, the organizing committee in Prince George is phenomenal. They're super easy to work with. They're excited to have this event. They're really keen to make this event like 100% focused on the task at hand here, which is selecting the Canadian team for trials, and we couldn't be more excited to work with them to run this event. So just looking at the options, option one would have an official training on Wednesday, December 10th, followed by the Sprint Classic. We would then have another official training day on the Friday, and then we would go back-to-back distance race days with the 10-kilometer interval start and the 10-kilometer free interval start. And then you can see the different options kind of sliding back to starting on a Friday and ending on a Monday, all the way to option four, where we would start on the Saturday and go through to the Tuesday. So this is kind of the outline we would be looking at. What the four options we'd be looking at. After this call is over, we'll be sending out the link to this recording. So for those that are not able to make it today, can watch the recording, and then we'll also be sending a link to a survey in both French and English, where we'd like to collect the feedback on this. Are there any questions so far?
Yep. Are the race formats finals? Or like, is it possible to have like a mass start or a skiathlon? I only see two individuals and one sprint.
So the event schedule of Sprint Classic, 10-kilometer classic interval, and 10-kilometer free interval were part of our they're in the selection criteria that was published in November. It was one of the things we did consult on, because we're selecting for team events primarily. That's why we chose the 10-kilometer classic and the 10-kilometer free. We're not trying to select the best mass start athlete here for a 20-kilometer or a skiathlon athlete. Like the true objective is to find athletes that can fill roles in classic and skate legs of the relay. Obviously, from that, we expect we should be able to populate our strongest team for all events. But the objective of these events is to select a team that aligns with our stated objective.
Just one question, Chris. So it's not for discussion. It's fixed, or the distance, or?
I mean, Louis, I think you know me well enough by now that nothing is ever not for discussion. So I think if people feel extremely strongly that we need to have a different event on here than one that is posted, I would strongly encourage you to include that in the survey. But I'd also ask you to provide really strong rationale as to how it would align with our objectives and the targeted events that I highlighted.
So it's not for discussion.
Well, like I said, this is not necessarily for discussion today. I'd say more than anything, I'd like to collect feedback
Yeah.
But
Okay, so my feedback on my side, I think it can be good to have a mass start for two things. There's two mass start at the games. I know it's not the main goal like the two mass start we have, because we select more the relay and the sprint. But at the same time, even the relay, it's also a mass start, you know, for both. Even the team sprint, even the athletes to perform also. So there's two things for me. It's like we have two events at the games. We have a mass start, and we have also the two team sprint are also mass start event.
so I'm assuming then, based on what you just said, like the
Classic individual start, we don't have classic individual start in the games.
Yeah.
Like it's not this distance doesn't exist at the game 2026.
Does anybody else have any thoughts or feedback on this? Okay, Louis, I've made note of your comments. I encourage you to, when you fill the survey, just put it into the feedback for this question. And for anybody else who would like to give feedback on this, please also add that into the rationale and feedback box for this question. And like anything, right? Like if we're seeing an overwhelming response, and I'll take this offline as well and give it some more thought and talk about it with people. So
What is the rationale of to put the race where we don't have this race format at the games?
I think the rationale when we looked at it was just trying to identify the best middle distance classic skiers. That was the rationale. Because if we were to do a mass start, are we looking at doing a 10-kilometer mass start for classic?
But if you don't have this even the distance, even the style at the game, so what do you identify?
So then,
Kind of confused because if we have to choose for someone in the 10K skate, then we take a 10K skate, you know. But
I guess I'm looking at
if we don't have to choose someone in the 10K classic individual start because there's no race, then I don't see the rationale. It's hard to explain.
so you're suggesting a 7.5-kilometer classic mass start?
No, I suggest we have like we have the duathlon or a mass start like it can be 7.5 or 10K, but at least the same distance we use.
Yeah, because our strongest interest is identifying athletes that can be the strongest in a 7.5-kilometer classic, right?
Yeah, but yeah, for sure. Like you said, for sure, I suggest 7.5 mass start, the same distance in classic. If you want to evaluate people for the team sprint, for the team relay, but if you want to evaluate someone for the duathlon, then you do a duathlon. But yeah, anyway, so same distance, same style.
Okay. Thanks, Louis. Thanks, Julien. So the second area that we are looking to collect feedback on, and it's stated in our selection criteria that once our quota positions were identified at the end of the 2024-25 selection cycle, that we would identify the priority ranking of events that will be used by May 1st. And when we look at 5.9A of the selection criteria, the next step is to rank the winners of each race based on the priority ranking of those events. And then for 5.11, we would be then ranking second place finishers followed by third place finishers until we've satisfied our quota allocation. Because of the nature of the event, the team events, the relay, but also the team sprint, the option rankings that we're considering would be the option 1, which is the one that's recommended by, that's being recommended by myself after consultation with our performance committee, is the 10-kilometer free, the 10-kilometer classic, and then the sprint classic. And then option 2 would be the 10K classic, followed by the 10-kilometer free in the sprint classic. One thing that is stated also in our selection criteria is that there's no obligation that we use the same priority ranking for men and women. So in the rationale or feedback box, you can also express a difference in between the two genders based on the allocations for quota, especially for the woman with 6 spots. We think it's okay to have the same priority ranking for both genders, but again, it's really important for us to collect this feedback because people can see things that we don't always see. As far as where the sprint position ranks, we feel that ensuring that we have the distance races ranked above the sprint gives us the highest probability of having a team of athletes that can fit for the goals for the team events. Any questions before I move to the next slide? We've also had quite a few reach out about wax protocols for the trials. Our objective is, number 1, to ensure fluoro-free, I should say fluoro-free, my apologies on that, fluoro-free race conditions for athletes, coaches, and teams. We also know that there is a high cost to managing a fluoro-free wax room. So for no matter what we do in terms of wax protocol or no wax protocol, we will have the Brooker fluoro testing device, and we'll have a fluoro testing protocol for trials so that we're able to ensure maximum compliance and fairness for the races. But we still want to collect feedback as to whether or not teams would prefer to have no wax protocol with testing procedures in place, which means a normal race service environment where teams are in control of being able to test as they choose, apply as they choose, or option 2, which would be to develop a wax protocol and still use the testing procedures. If the preferred option is option 2 in a wax protocol, then we would put together a working group to determine what the best protocol would be. I would say it's important to note, though, that there's always going to be costs associated with a wax protocol. And so based on what the outcome is from a working group, there would be costs involved to athletes and teams to basically help operate an option 2 process for wax protocol. Any questions? Lastly, just a bit more clarification too on Nordic Cups and CO events. Julie, do you want to speak to this, or would you like me to continue?
Oh, you can go ahead if you want. If not, I'm happy to.
No, you can go ahead.
Just this is a little bit more relevant to the juniors and U23s. I like how you're laughing there, Chris. Trials, and we've had just a lot of conversations. We met with our athlete advisory committee last night, just getting feedback on location and events. And we just wanted to address a couple of the feedback pieces we got, which is one of them was like, it's a Canadian event, it should be Canadians only. I'm sure this group of people already knows all this, but if we want to sanction an event with FIS, we can't actually prevent people from participating in our event. So if we want a COC event to be FIS sanctioned, and to be able to do the prize money, the FIS points, etc., then we can't actually close off the trials event to other nations that want to participate. So just one of the things that wasn't maybe clear to a lot of the athletes was, you know, when they were coming back with some of their feedback. And then, of course, if we're not sanctioning events, what kind of consideration is that in terms of getting points, OC considerations with numbers? We know that our organizing committees require a certain amount of participation to be actually able to deliver the event from a financial standpoint. So just that was a bit more geared towards the juniors and U23s. And I suspect most of the coaches on here know this, but just in terms of sanctioning versus not sanctioning events or trying to minimize who's allowed to participate.
Thanks, Julie. So right now, the intention is to try to use would be to use the trials event as a COC. But we are happy to also collect feedback on whether there's an interest in keeping this event truly closed off to international skiers and making it a Canadian only event where we test the best Canadians against the best Canadians. So next steps, as I said before, following this meeting, we'll circulate the video recording and survey for feedback. We encourage coaches to discuss this information with your athletes and other stakeholders, and to use their feedback as part of the survey. As Julie mentioned, we did sit down yesterday evening with the athlete advisory committee, and we took that group through these slides as well. So athletes are also able to submit feedback directly. And feel free to share this information with people in your circles. And we ask that survey responses be submitted by April 29th. And as always, if you have specific questions or just want to talk through different scenarios or challenges, I'm always available by email or by phone. And as I said before, I'll also be at the Coach Development Conference this weekend, and happy to take conversations here as well. So if are there any questions before we wrap up today? Great. Well, thank you everybody for your time today. For those of you that were not able to make it, I hope you're having a great vacation or are doing well where you happen to be. And looking forward to connecting with everybody over the next little bit. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, everyone.